What's up? It's Matt. We are live with another restaurant expert roundup. And today we have a guest that is going to come in handier, no pun intended, than any guest I've ever had for 2020 with what's happened with the pandemic, because she's all about safety in the workplace. Francine, how are you?
I'm good, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. So I guess tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're from and what you do, and then we'll dig into smart, safe, and savvy.
Okay. So my name is Francine. My office is located in Hagerstown, Maryland. I'm actually from Pennsylvania. I have been in the food service industry for my entire life. Literally, I grew up, my grandparents had a convenience store. My parents had a grocery store. I started working in the restaurants when I was 15 years old, started as a fry girl, actually. I lied about my age to get my first job. Don't hold that against me. By the time they figured out I wasn't 16, I was doing a good job, so they let me keep the job, but all I was allowed to do was fries. So I did fries for I am an awesome fry girl. I could bag fries with the best of them. I did fries for about 6 months. And then I worked my way up through the ranks of the industry, from fry girl to cashier. There's not a position that I didn't hold. I ran a training store. I was an operating partner. I created training programs. I literally did everything there was to do within the food service industry. Actually, after 20 plus years, I decided to leave, and I worked for the same corporation the entire time. And honestly, while I worked in the industry, I was promoted to my own store when I was 24 years old. I was running $1 million restaurant, 50 nice. Employees, and looking back, that was a lot of responsibility for somebody that was somebody that age. I loved what I did, and I ran one of the most profitable restaurants in the company. We were consistently in the top 5, and I loved what I did, and I think that was part of the reason that I did as well as I did. After 20 years, I decided that I was going to do something different, and I left for about 6 months and worked in a completely different element. And this business is in your blood. You know what I mean? You either like it or you don't. And I missed it. I missed the fast pace. I missed what I did. I loved what I did all those years. I absolutely loved my job. So I wanted to come back, but not necessarily in the brick and mortar. So I was offered a job with a training company, and I started as a trainer within this company. And they told me it would be a couple hours a week, a little bit of travel. It ended up being 6 or 7 days a week, 30,000 miles a year, and that didn't include my airtime. So I ultimately became vice president of training for that company. I worked there for about 6 years. And for a variety of reasons, I left that company and ultimately ended up starting my own business. We started out as a training company, Food Safety Training Solutions, and you're an entrepreneur. I'll never forget my first class. Here I left a really good job. I've actually walked away from 2 very good jobs. And the very first class I taught had 2 people in it. 2 people. And my entire way home, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm counting the dollars in my head of what this cost me with the marketing and the meeting room that I had scheduled, my travel expenses and all of that. And I'm thinking, what the hell did I do? Am I crazy? And I'm not going to lie, there were a few tears involved in that, because I'm like, at that point, scared to death. Oh my God, I'm a crazy lady. Yeah. Ultimately, it worked out. And we grew as a training company and very quickly morphed into more than a training company. We became a consulting business. I helped companies nationally and internationally create a variety of different training programs, food safety training programs. And companies like myself build their own training programs. I mean, there's enough work in this country and around the world for all of us. I don't think that, we need to be, I'm not sure what the word I want to use is. I want to say selfish, but I don't know that that's the right word. I think that we should lend our expertise to as many people as we can, because there's enough work for everybody. Help them build their own brand in their own companies. And then we changed the brand to Savvy Food Safety, and ultimately, right now we're doing more consulting than we are training. And of course, COVID, helped help that along a little bit, because you can't any longer do training easily unless we're doing it through webinars or things of that nature. So that is how I got here. Through the consulting business, we have actually done health inspections for local jurisdictions. We have taught classes for learning institutions, colleges, universities. We train for private corporations. There's really nothing that we haven't done. Academic, regulatory. We've worked in brick and mortar. We've gone, it's unique to see from the perspective of regulatory, as well as knowing at what's happening when you walk in the door and say, here, I'm here to do a health inspection. What's happening in the back when you're standing in the front corner, because we've worked in the back, and also the other perspective as well. So, we've experienced a lot. As a health inspector, I'll never forget my most interesting story is probably I walked in to do a health inspection one day, and I was training a young man to be a health inspector. And we walked in, and you can't, you don't give a lot. You don't let them prepare while you're standing there. And we walked in, and I immediately went into the freezer, and I opened the door, and I looked in, and I'm like, I wasn't sure of what I was seeing. It took my mind a minute. I shut the door and I looked in again, and there were all these legs just like thrown on the floor. And I live in an area where hunting happens, so I wasn't really I don't know, intimidated by what I saw, but it wasn't in the right place. And so I walk in the door, and on the side, there's this big box with a black bag sticking outside of it. And this is all happening very fast. The owner's running in behind me, and he's trying to grab this bag. And real quickly, I'm thinking, I have to open that bag, but I don't want to open it, but I have to open it. And there were all these carcasses in there, and there were heads and legs sticking out of it. They had just literally slaughtered goats before we walked in the door. Literally. So I got the final straw for that as a company for us doing that was the day I closed a restaurant, and I closed many. A guy got a gun because I was shutting down a restaurant. And I'm like, yeah, we don't get paid quite enough for this. So, we've had some experiences.
So did you shift at that point to consulting for the restaurateurs to help them do things different and better?
Well, we were actually consulting. I started to say, when I worked in the restaurants, I operated a restaurant that was I assumed everybody did things the way that I did. It wasn't perfect. I'm not going to pretend it was, but I did do my best to do them well and to do them correctly. But I, at that point, realized that there was a definite need, and I don't believe that individuals, operators do things intentionally wrong. I don't think anybody is intentionally trying to make anybody sick, or that they want somebody to die because of what they're doing. I think that food cost is a big deal. It's a really big deal. That's, one of the largest costs, that and labor. And there's not enough education They
Yeah.
don't understand, how easy it is for people to get sick or, God forbid, die from the things that they do. And, people use training and education synonymously, and they're not the same thing. They're not. When you train somebody, you're showing them how to do something. And when you educate somebody, you're telling them why it's important.
Yeah.
And I always use the analogy of, do you want your children to have sex education or sex training? Because they're two very different things. Sorry about that.
I got an 8-year-old daughter, and that right there, I had a vision of like that. That's a pretty good example. I have a couple examples I use that I think are pretty clear, and that one is probably the clearest. But I think what you're getting at, and I agree, is, I mean, the biggest thing I've seen in this country, it's easy for anybody to start a business. I don't care what you're in. I happen to have a marketing firm. I own a gym. I'm partners in a gym. I've owned retail businesses. I work with hundreds of restaurants. And I've seen it to where people bootstrapped it and spent 20, 30, 40 grand and did this. I've seen it where they've spent $1 million. Typically, when you're spending $1 million, you've got your ducks in a row and you've got a certain business acumen in the building. Whereas like what you're talking about, I don't think people intentionally do things wrong. They just don't have that training, and they don't have the training that got them to that point. I see it in small business. We also train a lot of people that do marketing. We've trained about 300 advertising agencies to date around the world. And I'm amazed at how some things that I just absorbed through training and my father and my mom and being a kid of two entrepreneurs came naturally. And then I say something to me that's like no brainer, and they're like, I'm a genius. And it's the same things you do. You ran that restaurant at 24, doing $1 million a year, 50 employees, things that you probably learned through that pipeline of people above you, you took for granted. And then you get to look at this place and you got goat heads laying in a freezer. And it's like, that's just not allowed.
Right. Well, and there's a lot of things that, through just casual conversations with other people that, because I've been doing this for a long time, I hate to use the word assume, but, I take for granted. I think that everybody knows, and they don't. And, you can't take anything for granted. I've over the years at this point written almost 200 articles for magazines. And, you start feeling like you're writing the same things over and over and over again, because it's basic food safety information. And I don't want to feel like they're boring, because it becomes redundant. But there's, even though it's very basic, you never know who's going to pick up that magazine that hasn't read it before, or who doesn't know this very basic information, because there's a lot of people that truly don't understand the importance of it.
No, I agree completely there. And I think that's a key element that I've constantly catch myself saying. I actually looked back it was probably 6 months ago, and I watched a video that I did in 2010. And it's hilarious because it's still relevant from a marketing standpoint. My message is the same. I've been telling people, build a database, have people you can talk to. But I always catch myself, like I've been saying this over and over, but you never know who's paying attention. And a buddy of mine told me when he speaks at conferences, because I guess last 3 years I've been speaking at a lot of conferences, food conferences, industry conferences. And he's like, Matt, you have to imagine that the first time you go on stage, everybody in that audience is brand new. Yes, there's people there that have heard you talk. You've got to imagine that your speech is going to change their trajectory on what they're doing, and they've never heard it before. Because imagine if you were out there and you assumed, and like Matt Plapp the speaker was assuming you knew this and just glossed over it. It could be a difference in your business doing amazing or doing terrible.
Right. No, I agree with that 100%.
So going to the food safety world, with what you do, going into COVID this year, obviously a lot of businesses were prepared. I think the restaurant industry as a whole, probably from what I've seen, better than a lot of industries. Like if I compare restaurants to gas stations, I was amazed gas stations weren't shut down. Restaurants were, and gas stations are typically the ones I see when I travel. I probably get COVID's the least of my worries in most of those bathrooms. I hate to see the kitchens. But I think restaurants were, at least the guys I know and ladies I know, were really prepared because cleaning was at the heart of what they did. But I'm sure there's elements that you saw that a lot of them were caught off guard and had to up their game. What were some of the things that you've had to advise restaurants, like even your best operator, you got to do this, this, and this more often now?
Right. I think there are variations. I think that's true for a lot of them. The restaurants that were prepared were the ones that already had a fantastic food safety culture. And there's a lot of those out there that do have great food safety cultures. If their food safety culture was lacking in any way, they were caught totally off guard because they had to, get that food safety culture in place before they could all of a sudden put in any COVID-19 procedures, because you couldn't just start there. You had to get the basics under wraps before you could do that. But the things that were impacted the most were, even though maybe they should have been hitting those high touch points regularly, most of them weren't doing that. And in addition, and I'll go over what those areas are in just a second. Yeah. But in addition, we always talk about wash, rinse, and sanitize in restaurants. Those are the three things that we drill constantly: wash, rinse, and sanitize. We didn't use the word disinfect in restaurants. That word was not used because disinfectants are perceived differently. Because food contact surfaces, disinfectant, they just kind of don't go together. And now we're saying disinfect. So that is like totally new terminology in the food service industry. So with COVID, we need to use disinfectants. And those high touch points that we're talking about, have you ever worked in a restaurant? I'm not putting you on the spot.
So I had a client of mine that had 9 restaurants that I would go. I was there on a daily basis. So I wasn't a restaurant employee. I was the marketing director. So I guess technically, yes.
So the reason I'm asking this question is, my question to you was going to be, when you're cleaning bathrooms, like how often did you clean the flush handle on the toilet?
Oh, they probably cleaned it once a week.
If that, it's just not something they think about, is the flush handle on the toilet. And you might clean the sinks, but maybe not the handles on the sinks. Or, I managed a restaurant for years. I honestly can't tell you they cleaned the latches on the doors to the stalls to walk into the restroom stall. It's just not something that you really think about. But how many times a day is that touched on both sides? The back of the door handles on your way in and out of the stores. You might touch the fronts, but clean the fronts, but oftentimes the backs are missed. Look at the back of them.
Yeah. That was like I mentioned, I'm a partner in a gym. We have an 11,000 square foot gym, and the gym was pretty clean before. I had some things I didn't like that because I'm the behind the scenes. I don't work in it every day, but I'll go there most days and I would point things out. When COVID hit and we shut down for 2 months and we deep cleaned and painted and did a lot of remodeling, and then afterwards the cleaning procedures we put in place, we went from, I look back and I tell our trainers and my business partners, I'm like, wow, why weren't we mopping the floor after every class? I had 9 classes a day. People are like, today's burping. People are flopping their sweaty body on the ground up and down. And we would clean the floor every couple of days. It was clean, but now we mop it after class. And that's kind of what I think you're getting at, is there's those things you did decent. Now you got to do them to the extraordinary all the time.
Right. I worked with a company and we created COVID-19 response plans, and we did them created them for 5 different industries. And it was because they're not all industries aren't created equally. Everybody's just a little bit differently. So we created them for restaurants, C-stores, convenience stores, grocery stores, department stores, and fitness centers. And they were, we created a basic, advanced, and then we created a training plan to go with those assessment forms, which included videos and things like that. So I believe them to be very useful for those very reasons. Suddenly people are looking at things a lot differently, and you might not have thought about the light switch on the wall, or the floors as frequently, or the touch screen, on the treadmills, or the a variety of different things. The medicine balls, or the a variety of other things, that are in the fitness centers that people touch every day, but are they cleaned every day after every time somebody uses them? Because it only takes once.
Yeah, it's like our jump ropes. Like we have a jump rope rack, and I'd be willing to bet the jump rope handles were never wiped down. Like we've had them for a year. People grab them, they use them once every couple of weeks. Probably never. Now, when you get a jump rope off, before it's put back, the trainer sprays it down with disinfectant. It's wiped down, it's put up. And like I noticed, I told my partners, I told a couple of friends of mine that are members, I'm like, man, this gym, it's stupid to say because we are cleaning it way more, but it looks, every day I walk in, it looks brand new. And it's like, wow, I guess we were ignoring those little points that everything added up.
And jump ropes are one of the things that are on that. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
I'll give you reminded me of a story of the bathroom at that restaurant. So I'm at that restaurant and I was there. They had they had 9 locations they controlled, but they had 3 that I did a lot of stuff in. And so I would go there and hang out for 10, 12 hours a day and observe. And I was always, from a marketing standpoint, pointing things out that, might not be marketing, but to me they are. Like this place is near their bathrooms consistently didn't smell great. It smelled average. And I'm like, I'm in a restaurant. I'm smelling amazing food. I'm smelling amazing beer. I don't want to smell what I'm smelling in the restroom. And so they had found they had this sewer line issue that went through. They got all the stuff fixed, spent thousands of dollars, and it got fixed. About a week later, I'm down there and I walk in the bathroom and I'm like, dude, I hate to give you bad news. It smells back. And he's like, you serious? And I'm like, we go back, but it's different now. It was in the bathroom. In the bathroom, it was morning. It was 10 a.m. The cleaning crew had just left. And so we're looking around and I look up and there's a poster about 7 foot high, one of my marketing posters. And it was wet. You could tell where it not was wet, it had been wet. And I'm like, how the hell did that get wet? It's above the urinal. Somebody had peed on it. Like, now I have no clue because I'm like almost 6 foot and this thing was up here and me and the manager are going, wow. And like that was one comment was the cleaning crew doesn't really look at the posters 7 foot high to see
nothing above eye level.
Yeah. And it was, we're like, oh, okay. Well, they thought the smell was back. They came in, tore the poster down, sanitized the whole area. Everything smelled perfect, but it was just, there's those things like that you probably wouldn't imagine, but now you've got to be, you got to pay attention and you got to watch for it.
I'm hyper aware of stuff like that. We're in an office building and the restrooms, imagine having me in your
I'm like looking at my cup to make sure it's okay.
So there are vents in the ceiling and our bathrooms are really clean, but they've never cleaned the vent in the ceiling.
Oh, it drives me crazy.
Like,
you see that a lot in bathrooms with
and light bulbs, like burned out light bulbs are a thing for me.
So outside of COVID, what are some things that you teach restaurants to? Because I mean, to me, that experience is big. Like you mentioned, C-stores, gas stations. I travel a lot, and I'm amazed at how many mom and pop gas stations can't clean and paint a bathroom every 3 or 6 months. Because very rarely do I walk in a gas station and I'm like, man, I'm scared to buy a candy bar and a wrapper. But what are some things that you teach outside of COVID from a optics standpoint to restaurants that, hey, your consumers are seeing this, especially women, make sure it's taken care of, but also taking care of it makes your place a safer place?
Well, personal hygiene is number one.
Okay.
Hand washing. I mean, you can save more lives by washing your hands than any single vaccine in the world. People have got to wash their hands, not once a day, every time.
Did you ever see the Seinfeld episode?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
You see the Seinfeld episode with Jerry's girlfriend who her dad owned a restaurant, didn't wash his hands?
I don't remember it. I'm sure I did, but I don't remember it.
There was an episode where Jerry's girlfriend, I think her dad's name was Poppy, and he had a restaurant, and he was in the bathroom with him, and he came out of the stall and went to the mirror and slicked his hair back and kept going. And Jerry refused to eat there. The place went out of business, but it reminded me of that.
Yeah. So, but that's absolutely the number one thing is personal hygiene. People have got to wash their hands. And if your customers aren't seeing you wash your hands, they're assuming you're not washing your hands. Yeah. I can remember personally, and this is something that happened to me. When we first opened, they never expected my restaurant to do the volume that it did. It was super busy, and we had a very small bathroom. It opened with one stall and then went to two, which is a nightmare for women. I mean, the line was incredible. The sinks were backed up with people waiting to wash their hands. And again, this was way before I had the knowledge that I have now, but I thought I'll just wait and wash my hands in the back rather than wash them here. There must have been, I don't know, 75 people in my dining room waiting, and the dining room was full of seating. The capacity was just packed. I was reamed up one side and down the other from not washing my hands in the bathroom. I was mortified. And honestly, my intention was to wash them as soon as I got to the back. I was trying to be courteous and let the people in there use those sinks. And I was just going to wash them when I got to the back. And the assumption was that I wasn't going to wash my hands. If your customers don't see you washing your hands, they assume that you're not washing your hands. Hand sanitizer is not a replacement for hand washing. Wash your hands with hot soap and water, and then use the hand sanitizer. But you've got to wash your hands.
And I think people don't take that serious enough too. And a childhood friend of mine, his dad died of hepatitis C he caught from a restaurant, and it was in Cincinnati. It was tied to a chef that didn't wash his hands.
Wow.
And that
it was Hep A.
Huh?
Hep A or Hep C?
I think it was Hep C. Maybe it was Hep A. I was in high school. I was a senior in high school, and his dad got deathly ill. He's a VP of Huntington Bank, and was flying back and forth from these centers. And I think he had a year, and he ended up dying, and it was all from that restaurant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And you're right. People don't take it near seriously enough. And the problem is this: nobody thinks they're dirty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nobody thinks that they have anything dirty on their hands, and nobody thinks they're dirty. So it's like, it's not gonna hurt anything. And it's the number one cause of foodborne illness is people not washing their hands. So, single-use gloves, hand washing, that's just something that they have to pay more attention to than what they do. The details, pay attention to details. How often do you notice the baseboards and the floor, the corners in the bathrooms and how clean they are when you go into those bathrooms? You're saying about, that you get scared when you go into those. That's a sign. I always said, and this is just my mindset, when you walk over the threshold to go into a restaurant, if that is clean, that manager is detail oriented because they're cleaning those thresholds. Now, I don't know how many people are doing that anymore, but people need to be more detail oriented when they're cleaning, not just surface clean, but really detail clean. The cleanliness of your establishment is important. Food contact surfaces, temperature control, holding food at the proper temperature. Those are food contact surfaces are obviously a big deal. And holding food at the proper temperature, calibrated thermometers. People don't calibrate their thermometers as frequently. I feel like I'm starting to ramble here. And I'm talking fast. There are some restaurants that you go into and you ask for a thermometer and they can't even find a thermometer. They don't know where they are. Food Network drives me insane because, it's cook until the juices run clear. You can't cook until the juices run clear. You've got to physically take the temperature of the food. That's important to keep your guests safe. And you can't know if the temperatures are the proper temperature if you're not calibrating that thermometer. When you drop them, when they're new, You just need to make sure that they're properly calibrated. And, you know, a calibration log would be great if people were actually using calibration logs as well as temperature logs. Digitize your paperwork. I think that people should go digital because, you know, everybody, I come from the industry. I know what happens to the paperwork. It gets put in its tomato box in the ceiling of the restaurant. And, you know, you go to look for something and you find it and it never gets put back where it was. What happens if you get audited for something and you have to, let's say you have a foodborne illness, and you need that paperwork. I have a friend that works for the, she's an attorney that works for the ABA. And let's say that, you know, somebody had a food allergic reaction and God forbid they die or they end up with, you know, in the hospital. What happens if, you know, you need that paperwork and you can't find it?
Yeah.
You know, that's a big deal. And not just that, but like I said, foodborne illnesses, there's so many reasons to go digital. And our industry's fighting that. You know, we've been fighting it for years. And it's just, I believe it's going to happen. I truly believe that within the next few years, we're going to see more and more, we're going to be pushed into it. We're going to have to do it.
Well, I think from a marketing standpoint, I can tell you that it pushed a lot of restaurants into the digital world. 2020 did, because I mean, I'm a digital company. I mean, everything we do is helping them capture people digitally, Facebook, Instagram, email, text, all that. But I've always talked about online ordering and ease of, you know, like I've got contact tracers. We've got systems we've helped restaurants with that when people walk in the restaurant, they can easily know who they are, and it's digital. You have a piece of paper and a pencil. But I think that 2020 is going to force people to kind of go down that path.
Well, traceability is a big deal. And it's so funny because, you know, I've gone into restaurants where I'm going to use temperature logs. They don't think that we can tell when they're falsifying that documentation. And that's what it is. It's falsifying documentation. And we know when they're doing that. We can tell when that log is fudged. We know. And there are different ways that we know. So going digital with that isn't going to hurt from the aspect that they won't be able to do it because it'll be time stamped or anything, because we can look at those and tell if it's done anyway.
Anyways,
Does that make sense? You know, sure. We can tell whether or not it's legitimate paperwork.
Yeah. So in closing, tell us how businesses can work with you. We've got the website up here. Tell us, you know, I know it's smart, safe, and savvy is what your tagline is. Tell us how you can help restaurants be smart, safe, and savvy.
Well, actually, I have been offering during COVID, you know, not everybody, but a lot of companies have been having some financial restraints. So I've been offering free 15-minute consulting sessions. So they could go to my website for those. That's actually a really awesome value is the free consulting. They can register for those on the website. That is savvyfs.com. We are, like you said, you know, everything's digital. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and they can reach me at info@savvyfs.com.
Yep.
And that would be my contact information.
Cool. Well, I appreciate your time. I always like getting outside of the marketing world and hearing the other aspects of it, because, you know, I think this is an important conversation in 2019, but 2020, it's the conversation, and it's not going away, because I think we're all going to be way more cognizant of. I used to always crack up at the signs in bathrooms that said employees must wash their hands. I used to joke and tell my kids, everybody must wash their hands. And then now, you know, here we are in 2020. I think obviously that's going to become a staple, hopefully, but I think there's a lot of things you can help businesses with. So as she said, go to savvyfs.com. Real quick, where did the savvy come from?
My marketing. I'm
Okay.
gonna be honest.
I don't know if it's still
I'll put in a plug for marketing. I've got great marketing and branding. And when we were trying to come up with a tagline,
yeah.
I just loved it. And we were brainstorming, and I loved the word savvy.
Yeah.
And I thought it expressed, it's, I think we're very savvy at what we do.
Yeah.
And we can bring savviness to, anybody's company.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think, kind of like a level above the average food safety training or consulting. And we're there, we're I don't want to sound arrogant, but we're very good at what we do, and we're savvy. How's that?
Not arrogant. No,
I say one more thing.
I always like the name. Ever since I've been following you, I always like the name Savvy. Obviously it stands for something. For me, if somebody's savvy, they're above the norm. Like, here's the norm. We're savvy. We're up here. I like that. But I didn't know also part of me was wondering if it was an acronym, if there was some other meaning there behind it. But no, I love the name.
It kind of, I feel kind of arrogant when I say that, but I mean, it's, we're good at what we do. We're very good at what we do.
Yeah.
Foodborne illnesses are 100% preventable. Nobody should ever die from eating food. So if people are dying from eating food, somebody screwed up somewhere.
Yeah.
And we all need to do what we can do to prevent that from happening. So my perspective has always been that if I can keep even one person from dying because of what I've done, then I've done my job. So that's, even as an entrepreneur, even when the times have gotten tough, and trust me, as an entrepreneur, times they have, most of us. That's the reason I've stuck it out, because it's just, we save lives is what we do in this industry. And anybody that does what I do and is serious about what they do will tell you the same thing. It's, we have fun, and the one thing, my colors are bright. They're not your typical drab, and I like to have fun doing what I do. I try not to, it's a serious industry. We talk about death and getting sick and vomiting and diarrhea. But the one thing that I've always wanted to do, and I believe that people learn more when they're having fun, is do as much as I can for people to have fun while I'm doing what I am to help them. So.
Awesome. Well, I love it. Yeah, the office you've got, I love the colors. I've seen it online. Maybe one day I'll get to visit it, but I love all the colors. Love your attitude, and there's nothing wrong with being. I wouldn't even use the word being confident in your ability, because I think a lot of times people aren't confident enough. And I can tell you right now, I'm the best damn restaurant marketer there is, and I have no doubt. And from following you online and hearing you and seeing what you're doing, you're the savviest and the best at food safety. And I thank you as a consumer, because I eat out often. I mean, way too often. And I think that, that's what I like to do. And the fact that you're helping restaurants do it better is a big deal. And if you can save one life in 100 years, that's worth it.
Right. I agree.
Cool. Well, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
You're welcome. Make sure you guys check out savvyfs.com. That's savvyfs.com. And make sure you schedule that free 15-minute consultation to make sure that your restaurant is up to snuff 2020 and beyond. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.